Eisner is author of Injustices, the Supreme Court's history of confronting the comfortable, comforting the comfortable, and afflicting the afflicted. I feel like that's somewhat like that's a journalism line about afflicting the comforted and comforting the afflicted, but I digress. All right, Ian, is this where we're at now, that every time we get towards the end of a president's time in office or potential time, if there's an older justice of his party, it's going to be time to push them out?
I think the nature of the Supreme Court has changed a lot over the last 2 or 3 decades. Both parties are much more sophisticated in vetting justices than they were even 10 years ago. You can remember, Republicans will say no more suitors. They're referring to David Souter. The Bush appointee wound up being fairly moderate. Democrats, you can look back, you can find people like Justice Byron White who are a little more right-leaning. And so it used to be the case that you couldn't predict everything that a justice is going to do based on which president appointed them. Now, again, both parties are much better at vetting justices. Democratic justices are more reliably Democratic. Republican justices are more reliably Republican. And so in a world where the justices become interchangeable parts, where one Republican is the same as another, where one Democrat's the same as another, of course, you're going to have, smart people in both parties saying, why am I attached to this one individual? We should just make sure that my party keeps the seat.
Right. We know what happened with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for example. I mean, this was a discussion during the Obama years a little bit. Key rulings by conservative courts: climate change, separation of church and state, abortion rights, Second Amendment. Obviously, now we're getting into some of the affirmative action cases. There was already one, another one coming, on and on and on. Everyone keeps focusing on the court and how it's changing all these things. I mean, if you think about the way the court sort of radically changed America and the look of America, Brown v. the board. Are we right to put so much emphasis on the outsized effects of the court now versus the 1950s?
So I think the court has always been a powerful institution. I mean, what is different about this moment? I mean, it's not a unique moment in American history, but it is an unusual moment of American history, is we had 3 seats on the Supreme Court turn over in a hurry. So a lot of change happened really, really fast. And this happened in the context of the other phenomena that I was just discussing. Both parties are better at picking justices who will align with their party's preferences than they were 20 or 30 years ago. So when you have a lot of seats turn over, you're going to have a lot of change, because if those seats go to the Republican Party, the Republican Party is going to get a lot of stuff they want. If they go to the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is going to get a lot of stuff they want.
Fair enough. Look, if you're somebody who believes in the experiment that is America, and you look sort of how the founders envisioned the 3 branches of government, now I'm turning into a real nerd, but the one that continues to do its job the best, the way the founders defined it, is probably the Supreme Court, if you would agree with that. How does that continue if it's going to be so politicized?
So I think I'm going to disagree with you. Like, the Supreme Court, as it was originally understood, was a very weak institution. Justices typically did not serve for 20 or 30 years. They served for a few years. And the reason why is because it was a terrible job. You had to travel circuit around the whole country. If you were assigned to the Southern Circuit, much of the South was still a swamp at this point. So if you were assigned to the Southern Circuit, you got malaria and you could die. So, like, people didn't want to be Supreme Court justice. It wasn't a powerful job because it wasn't a very good job. And that's another way that things have changed since the founding, is that now it's a great job. You serve for life, you make a good salary, you have all this power. All you got to do is write essays for a living. You don't even have to write them because you have law clerks that are writing them for you. Yeah. So they stick around forever.
Well, yeah. The founders didn't think about term limits. That's the one thing they forgot. Ian, fascinating conversation. You are an expert on something that has become one of the conversations in American politics, and we will be fortunate to have you back. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.